The story that I chose for my individual presentation is Blue Collar Brilliance by Mike Rose. In this story, he's talking about how most people look down on the blue collars. Blue collars are your working class people, the ones that, in his situation, didn't necessarily finish high school or they had like 1 to 2 years of college. So, white collars would look down on these people. They would always assume that they're dumb and that they're uneducated simply because they didn't have as much schooling as them. Uh, I believe that to not be true. I believe that without blue collars, white collars wouldn't really have their chance that they have because blue collars are the ones that are providing the food as butchers, working the railways to provide trains. That way people can get food, get clothes, get everything by trade. Uh, and most of the time, white collars normally end up hiring blue collars, whether that's like landscaping or maids. So really, there's no need to, I guess, make fun of blue collars because blue collars are just your normal everyday people. They're just like white collars. But in his situation in the 1950s, this is when his story like starts. So in the 1950s, his mother was a waitress at a restaurant, and she would tell him how she was learning new things every day simply by being a waitress and hearing people's stories. And her boss was like more so of a white collar person, or at least he acted like it. He would constantly call his employees dummies for no reason other than they dropped out of school. But she only dropped out of school to support her brothers and her family. Her brothers, some of them ended up like going to college, but some of them also dropped out to help support the family. Um, so connections that I was able to make with this story is my mom didn't go to college. She's worked maybe like 3 to 4 different jobs. People constantly look down on her for not having a college education, and I think that's just wrong. I don't think people should do that. It just angers me that people make fun and look down on people. My mom has also been the best worker at every place. She deserves the promotions, and the promotions just go to people who have a college education, and that's not how it should be. The uh, So, for my discussion questions, um, is Mike Rose correct when he says that definitions of human intelligence should not be based solely on grades in school and numbers on IQ tests? That I don't believe. I think he is correct. I believe that he's correct because people may have like ADHD and they can't pay attention for a long amount of time. People can get distracted easily, therefore, their grades will reflect that. Other people have work that they have to do. Like, people have jobs and it might not give them time to do homework or study. And when you can't study, your test might reflect that. You might get a bad grade on a test. You might not be able to do your homework. Other people, they simply might just find school boring and therefore they just won't try. And not that I think that's right. I think you should always try your hardest in school, but who am I to say that? The second question is, according to Rose, how should intelligence be defined, especially among workers whose tasks are not closely associated with formal education? He thinks that education should be defined as the values the workers exhibit rather than just their thoughts that their work requires. Uh, if he had to add something to the traditional definition of intelligence, he would add that you should also include people's values and their work ethic in not just their grades that they get in school and not just their so-called IQ that you would get from a test. Third, Mike Rose is Why is Rose concerned with definitions of intelligence that consider everyday work to be mindless? What effects are such misguided, in his personal view, conceptions likely to have on society in the future? These conceptions, they're likely to create limited educational opportunities and fail to make meaningful connections among people. These will do this because if you can't connect to a person, then people aren't going to pay attention. That's why where limited education comes in, because if you can't connect schooling to people or just everyday work to someone, they're not going to want to do it, because it's human nature. When you can't like make a personal connection to something, you're just not going to want to do it. So that's why I answered it like that. What does Rose mean? The fourth question, is what does Rose mean by the concept of cognitive variability, and where, aside from watching his mother wait tables in a restaurant, did he likely learn about this? So, the concept of cognitive variability means to appreciate all blue-collar workers and their accomplishments. He learned this because he actually studied psych and human performance, or at least he did back when he went to school and before he retired. So, but he also was able to learn this by watching his mother in the restaurant, as was said in the question. And he was studying this, and he would watch people in factories and rail yards. He would watch them work, and he would watch how people would just react to them and how people thought down on them. But anyways, like I said earlier about the story, to summarize the whole story, he basically just spends his life, not his life, but trying to figure out why white collars tend to look down on blue collars.